Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hero Movie Podcast, your greatest source for superhero movie discussion in the multiverse. I am your host, Adam Portrais, and I'm joined by Sean Koufax.
Dang it!
And of course, Bruce Leslie.
I'm a prickly pear, and I never apologize for being the smartest person in the room.
No, you don't. You the smartest boy every single day, and that's why we love you, and that's why we love actually going to the movies to see a new Spider-Man film shoot, man. We got just an Avengers film not too long ago, and they're going to wrap up Saga 1. Technically, this is, I guess they're calling it them sagas now. So this is the end of the regular Marvel MCU as we know it. Everything is going to change from there. How is it going to change? We're going to talk about that a little bit on the show today. But of course, we'd like to thank everybody that helps support this program by going over to patreon.com/HMP. There you get the pre-show, post-show, and of course, the most famous of Dinger Zones, where we just talk about this, that, and the other. It's a heck of a value, man. So check that out. Help support this show, and we really appreciate all of you who do. So, gentlemen, who is ready for yet another Spider-Man movie?
Oh, everyone, I think this time around.
Everyone was really, no one was going like, oh, no, not another Spider-Man movie. And according to the box office of $580 million worldwide, whoa, I think they're going to do okay. It's amazing. So they're kicking butt over there, and for all of good reason. But before we get into this movie proper, let's go ahead and see if we can unearth some of the origins of all these things. And you know how we do that, don't you?
It's time for Bruce's comic book connection.
Alrighty, Bruce, what do you have for us this week? We've covered Spider-Man so many times, I don't know how you're going to go the well.
Well, debuting in Amazing Spider-Man number 13 way back in 1964, Quentin Beck was a special effects guru with dreams of making it big in Hollywood. Unfortunately, as happens all too often in the City of Dreams, his dream fizzled out. He came to see his career in special effects as a dead-end job. His attempts to become an actor were poorly received, but he realized that his expertise in illusions could make him an effective criminal. As his first caper, Beck aimed high. He decided to frame Spider-Man for a crime and brand the web slinger as a menace to society. He took up the moniker Mysterio and used gas to cloud Spidey's Peter Tingle and a chemical abrasive to dissolve the wall crawler's webs. However, Spider-Man tricks Mysterio into revealing that he robbed the museum. Then Spider-Man revealed he had also captured it all on tape, because back in 1964, tape was the only way to capture things. I picture, he had like an 8mm camera hiding reel-to-reel tape going by.
It's not masking tape, kids. Don't get it confused.
Now, Mysterio was then thrown in the slammer, blaming Spider-Man for his ruined career. Next up, Mysterio skipped out of the joint, and he joined the Sinister Six, cementing himself as a recurrent thorn in Spider-Man's side. In perhaps one of Mysterio's weirdest and thus one of my favorite plots, he manipulates Aunt May into revealing the whereabouts of a lost fortune hidden in her house. Beck used some bogus alien disguises to frighten May Parker into telling him where the treasure was, but then he learned that the money had been eaten by silverfish. Yes, Mysterio was defeated by household pests. And by the way, Aunt May, what's up with that? Why don't you give the Orchid Man a call if you got silverfish so bad they can eat through thousands of dollars in cash? Now, after suffering a sound defeat at the hands of the Power Pack, Mysterio lost pretty much all of his credibility as a supervillain. But he decided to step it up a notch when he shot himself in the head, then he went to hell, and then he returned to the land of the living with part of his head missing. Now, being Mysterio, there are several people that suggest perhaps he faked his own death and resurrection. Now, during the Spider-Man storyline, Mysterio is the fellow responsible for taking Peter Parker and Miles Morales between the 616 and the Ultimate Universe, marking the first time the two realities ever interacted. In his most recent appearance, Mysterio seems to confirm that he did, in fact, die and go to hell, and proves it when a demon shows up and kills old Fishbowl Head before the villain can reveal the demon's true name. But when it comes to Mysterio, seeing is definitely not believing.
Well, I let me tell you, I believed a whole bunch this week because, man, I went and I've seen Spider-Man twice at this point, and I gotta say, it's something else. But you don't want to hear me talk about it. You want to hear a great fake trailer, don't you? Well, here's what I've got though. Oh, come on.
This year, you were brought to the edge of extinction with Avengers Endgame. Now, Marvel has assigned Spider-Man to head the cleanup effort. It's summertime, but that means nothing when you're a smart student at Midtown High, where apparently kids just get to go on week-long vacations, thousands of miles for home, with the only supervision being two hapless teachers who couldn't find their butts with both hands. You know, when I was a kid, they took us to a plant in town that made like bed sheets, and we were told to shut up and listen because one day we'd all be working there. Turns out all that manufacturing now is done in the Philippines. Chug it, Miss Hanson. Peter Parker is excited to be Spider-Man, but his teenage years have him wanting to put the Spider-Man suit on the shelf and live like a kid again. Spider-Man may not be the replacement for Iron Man the world has been hoping for, but there's a new face on the scene that just might fit that mold. Mysterio is the newest hero on the scene, and he's saving the world left and right. Maybe we won't need Spider-Man after all. Are you stupid or something? I mean, it's called Spider-Man. Of course things are gonna happen. Get ready for the European vacation action comedy that you never knew you wanted, wrapped in a colorful superhero shell. Spider-Man: Far From Home. You may have to leave your house for this one. Rated PG-13. All right, that was the fake trailer.
Hold on. I got to ask Sean a question.
Yes.
Was mine that long?
Yours was longer, but
my goodness!
But it just doesn't feel that way right now.
Proximity bias, folks. Proximity bias.
I do like that. We bagged on Bruce's super long piece, and Adam, you made a lunch out of that one.
It's 2 minutes. That's less. That's your average. That's less than your average trailer time.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
All I know is that if I were listening to this show and that kept going, I would be fast forwarding. That's all I'm saying.
Listen, all right. How do you feel about the trailers? Just tweet us, email us, whatever. I've let's let the people decide.
I think everyone wants them to be shorter. That is my guess.
Oh boy.
All right. So Spider-Man, fine.
I do love the song "Vacation" though by the Go-Go's. It's great. Yeah, it's great music.
I did spend about an hour writing and editing, and okay.
No, and you did good work. You did good work. I'm glad that you did that because it really sounded great.
I don't need your pity. All right, this movie is good.
Yeah, it really is great.
Now,
it really is.
Now, I want to get into this a little bit. Now, for those of you who would be new listeners to the show, and when there are new releases, we always have new listeners joining the show. Do note that from this point out, we will be spoiling everything in this movie and maybe beyond. Who knows? So do keep that in mind. Spoiler alert from here on out. That being said, Sean, I know going into this movie, I was a little bit apprehensive for you because I know enough about you to know that you don't like dream sequences, magic, none of that stuff. It suits you at all, does it?
You're right. I would literally not watch the episode if it had something to do with a dream, or if there's the cartoon episode of something that always makes me nuts. Also, I hate that. But
those Simpsons years were rough.
Well, the ones especially where, he finds his spirit animal and, oh, my God.
Yeah.
Forget it. But
special guest star Johnny Cash.
Here is the cool thing about this, the way they do it here, is that it's so disorienting when you're watching it, just as a moviegoer, it's so disorienting because that's the point. Like he's not trying to like learn something about himself.
Yeah.
You know, like he's literally just trying to get through these hallucinations to get to the thing. And so it works on that level. It's almost like somebody at Marvel said, look, everybody hates dream episodes of anything, so let's not do that. And so you're right, because that was fear is too strong a word, but it was I was cautious
apprehension
about right. I was cautious about how much I was going to set my standards for this movie, because I really wanted to like it, because as you guys know, I love Spider-Man Homecoming. It's one of my favorite Marvels. It's one of my favorite Spider-Mans. And so I wanted to see that continue. And I thought that they nailed it. I really do. I really, really enjoyed this movie. And I think one of the reasons why I like it so much, and again, I'm gonna go general first, and then we can start going into deep dives. But one of the things that I really like is that this is old school superhero storytelling. Mm-hmm. You know, the underlying message to this, the allegory of this movie is Peter needs to believe in himself as much as other people believe in Peter. Like that is literally what the secret message behind this movie is. And that's some old school superhero movie stuff.
Well,
you
even
don't get a lot
true
of that
believer,
anymore.
yeah, all that kind
of. Now, I've got another question real quick. I'm not trying to derail the conversation, but going into old school format, were they suggesting that his Spidey sense was maybe going away in this one? Like, was that the closest we got to lose his power in the second movie?
I thought it was more like he hasn't learned how to necessarily. I liken it to kind of force abilities, if you will. Like he hasn't really learned he hasn't developed that talent yet, I guess. Which, you know, for the term Spidey sense, you would think that would be, innate, but maybe not.
Because they kind of, I almost wonder if at some point that was supposed to be a big deal, and they realized, wait, we're doing the second movie thing that every second movie does. But when Aunt May throws the banana and it hits him in the head, and it leads to the whole funny talk about the new name for his spider sense, I thought are they trying to tell us that he doesn't have a spider sense? And, knowing what I know about Mysterio, I figured he would need that. But they didn't really lean into that.
I'm so glad they didn't, aren't you? Isn't that
absolutely.
So refreshing?
But I think it's worth making a mention that maybe somewhere along the line there was a thought of going to losing your powers in the second movie.
Oh, for sure there was, and then they just decided not to. And I'm glad they swerved out of the path of that truck, because that would have made me like this movie considerably less.
Well, here's the thing, though. I mean, that being said, they never really truly developed the ability of the Spidey sense in any of the other films. They pointed like slight references to it, like when he's riding the school bus and everything, and the hair in his arm stick up, things like that. But there's a couple other things. But by and large, they really got away from that, and it did bring a lot of people having the question of, hey, shouldn't he have spider sense that tips him off about these sort of things? So I think with this particular movie, they really leaned into that and really just gave it hey, sometimes it's working, sometimes it's not. And again, I think that's something that they're going to look at maybe we need to try to hone this as opposed to it just being a natural thing for him.
Right.
That's my best guess. And
then also, I think I've made it pretty clear, and I've talked about it more than once, but my biggest dissatisfaction perhaps in the whole MCU is the mistreatment of the Mandarin in Iron Man 3. So when you get a character fake out, boy, that's going to sit raw with me. And we get sort of a character fake out, but it helps that I know the character before I'd seen the movie. And the fake out would have been if they didn't have the fake out with this particular character. But I still got a little bit cautious for a moment because I was worried he wasn't even going to be Quentin Beck, that they just made us think Mysterio was the villain. And then all of a sudden it was going to be yet another person in armor, So I was kind of glad that the fake out wasn't as bad as I thought, but boy, I started getting real trepidatious there for a moment when the reveal started happening that we haven't quite gotten to.
Can we let's talk about villains here for a second in the Spider-Man Marvel universe here, because both of the Spider-Man villains in both this and in Homecoming, are both villains who are forged and formed because of Tony Stark's abuse of people. And I think that that's a very interesting tale that they're telling. And I wonder if we're going to get that again in a third Spider-Man movie. I'm sorry, picture. Because they seem to be set on this path, right? That you're going to have these villains who are normal people who are who have been either done wrong by Tony Stark just through signing things like the Vulture was, or in the case of Mysterio here, there's an entire network of people who can't stand him, who used to work for him. And that's very interesting to me, because there's probably 30 people in that room with Mysterio when we first see who he actually is. I mean,
and he actually is Mysterio. Okay, I want to make that. This isn't like he turns out to be another Trevor who is just hired to, I mean, he really is Mysterio at his heart. So when we say we see who he actually is, we just see who Mysterio himself is, and not who
he is.
Mysterio's
He is
not
Quentin Beck.
not the superhero from a different world.
Yeah, because in all the trailers, they show Mysterio flying and doing what looks like magic, and I'm thinking from the trailers, boy, they've really mucked it up on Mysterio here. But thank goodness, no, we got.
Maybe it's foolhardy of me to do so, but even what little bit I saw of trailers and stuff, I go, they know what they're doing, and I didn't buy for a second that he was going to be a good guy, but like even my dad was like, when he was telling me about when he went to go see it, he was just like, I got halfway through and I'm just like, maybe he's like, I know he's a bad guy, but maybe he might be a good guy. So like, even a lifelong, Spider-Man fan was still on the fence as to whether or not, it would actually take place, and it totally worked. But what I do want to point out here, and that I think a lot of people took as swipes at fans at first, but upon watching it a second time, I saw it completely different. So Mysterio has this whole backstory that he is told that essentially says that he is from an alternate universe. We find out later that that's absolute bunk. He is from this Earth. That's just a story that they made up. And they literally basically just say, hey, if anyone just like multiverse, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of in my entire life. Who would fall for that? Or like, why would you accept that? And it really seemed like a punch in the face to DC to me.
Now, I'm going to say something else, though. This is the one part of the fake out I had a tough time forgiving. And that's because based on the lies they're told by Mysterio, they identify the Earth as Earth 616, this primary cinematic Earth. And now it can never really be the 616 because that was entered into canon as a lie. And that kind of bummed me because I did like the idea. I had built this idea in my head that Mysterio was from another place in the multiverse, and that this is going to be known as the 616 for the comic book fans, and that he was actually a villain who destroyed his world, and he's coming here trying to paint himself as a hero, and he's going to be discovered. That's kind of what I thought. But I thought, okay, they've got Fox, they've got properties they need to keep apart. This is the time to introduce a multiverse, because this is the time where we could kind of use a multiverse in the MCU, because it's been so successful with one universe. It's like if everybody loves your New York location, you got to open one up in LA kind of thing.
Well, they have created a multiverse. They just did it in an Endgame. And so, I mean, I understand that using the 616 as a lie is a bummer. And I agree with you. I think that it is a bummer, but they, it's not a shot at DC because they just did it. The way that the Avengers win in Endgame, spoilers for Endgame, but why would you be listening to this anyway?
Yeah, what's wrong with you?
They basically fracture time in order to win. And so in order to do that, you start creating, multiple versions of the universe. And that's what they did. And that's how it ends. Go ahead.
And DC's multiverse, I don't know why you would take a shot at them per se, because their multiverse so far is pretty much limited to the CW, and they're having a lot of fun with it. And I think everyone involved as a viewer or, a showrunner is happy. They are achieving their goal. I mean, their goal isn't to compete with the MCU at all, but what they're setting out to do, I think they're doing just fine.
I mean, as far as television goes, but I mean, their movie and television departments are very much separated.
Yeah, but I don't think that DC's ever introduced a multiverse in their Warner Brothers major motion pictures that are live action.
What do you call that Flash crap? Where he's like in some other dimension or something.
I think that's time travel. I don't think that's a different dimension.
Listen, I've wiped most of those movies out of my brain on purpose, so despite owning them.
But then again, I could be wrong just as easily as you. So I'm not arguing about it. I'm just saying that's how I thought about it.
I mean, like I said, I don't know. That's why I guess I'm just, poking at stuff.
One thing I do want to point out is early on, first off, I love PowerPoint presentations. I love the way the show opens with a song written by Dolly Parton, by the way. I've been on the record in the Dinger Zone with how big a Dolly Parton fan I am, even though it's the Whitney Houston singing it. But we get this PowerPoint presentation about the fallen heroes. I love it. We even have like the watermark that says Getty Images still on one of the slides.
So great. What a nice, like, just such a tiny thing that just really changes the entire thing. Like, what a lovely choice.
Yeah, 16-year-old kids would have done that.
Man, and I don't know the ins and outs of Hollywood movie making, but I like to think it actually costs more to use the watermark than it did to use the image in film terms.
Probably.
If I was negotiating, I'd be like, look, we'll put your watermark. We'll keep the watermark on there if you give it to us for free. Ah, crap.
Talk about revolutionary product placement.
Yeah. With just stock images. I love that thing, and I love their kind of retake on everything, just saying like, hey, here's kind of how, what we now call, instead of the snap, the blip. I've heard people have problems with that differentiation too, snap versus blip, and I'm like, who cares? But that whole background of you come back and then, your brother's 5 years older than you are, and that's fun.
I love that.
And I love that they just got it all out of the way up front, because after Endgame, when we're seeing previews for Far From Home, I just in my small community, in my house, people at work, I'm hearing folks say, but how are they still in high school, going on a high school trip? I mean, what's the deal? He's been gone 5 years. And he's going back to high school. I don't understand. They explain it nice and simple, straightforward. And then if you're complaining at that point, you're just a complainer. But I do think it was a little convenient that all the principal characters blipped. Like, I would have found it real interesting. Let's just say there were two scenarios that I had in my mind that I thought would be interesting. The one I think I would have liked to have probably seen, and it would have maybe been able to work on the Hollywood side, but to have Flash not blip. Okay, so Flash, they come back. Flash is 5 years older, and he's actually a first-year teacher at the school, and he still bullies Peter, even though he's a teacher now instead of a student. I would have found that interesting. Something that's, and
what a weird take, Bruce.
And you can recast Flash to get somebody a little bit older. What I really would have liked to have seen, and if it were comic books, this is probably what they would have done, but you're not going to recast Zendaya. She's kind of a big deal. You're not going to recast her as MJ, but it also would have been interesting. How would Peter deal with coming back and he's now 5 years younger? Kind of gives you another petty, less drastic Peggy Carter, Captain America angle to work with.
I don't know. I do like them just kind of getting in and hey, we're rarely going to speak of this ever again. Okay. All right, good. And then just moving it on.
Yeah, come back and Ned's now like a combat marine or something. That would have been weird.
All right, so let's talk about Ned, because Ned has quite the mini turn in this movie.
I love Ned. I got to tell you, you might be shocked to hear this, but I love Ned.
No surprise.
What a surprise!
But I'll be honest though, who would hate Ned? It's such a great, fun character. Like, I don't care if he's like in this relationship thing or the stuff before. He's just like, I don't know. There's just something about that kid that just like seems happy and positive, and then you're just like, hey, that guy would be my friend.
Somewhere there's somebody who hates Ned because doesn't have a real clear-cut counterpart in the comics. Like I'm telling you, there's some of those guys out there.
Those guys can stick their head in the sand where it belongs.
Yeah, because Ned is wonderful.
It's such a great character. Shut up.
Yeah, one of the best like totally new additions added, and I'm hoping maybe in the third movie, Ned and Happy like start hanging out so they can get a spinoff, like Ned and Happy on assignment or something.
Going to Peru or something. I don't know. Be fun.
Oh man, he gets like an Iron Man suit for Ned. Oh, that'd be great.
But I also loved it. I mean, even in the first one, how Ned was just so, like, he's happy to be the sidekick. There doesn't have to be, like, some sort of, he wants to be the guy behind the desk. And I thought that's cool because, like, everybody wants to be, the superhero. So few people want to be the guy, with the computer. And, and he's good at it. And that's the best part. Yeah, exactly. He wants to be Micro.
And the actor has charisma out the wazoo. They bring personality to the character. It's just a lot of fun, and I'm sure soon enough we'll be talking about the plane trip and this weird, like, super intense but super short relationship that Ned has with Betty Brant is amazing.
I do have to say, one of the things that was surprising to me is that they don't have Vulture's daughter back. Why isn't she back at school?
She got sent away. Remember, they took them to another thing.
Right.
Oh, I just told myself she didn't blip. Like, she's graduated and moved on is what I thought. She
could have been, but they moved her to, like, a secret thing or whatever at the end of the movie.
Right. And also the blip is the perfect out if they wanted to use that to get rid of any character.
Oh yeah, for sure. Just like, oh yeah, she works for a real estate place now. So there you go.
See, she didn't disappear with the snap. Oh, that's great. And then she died of a horrible heart attack at a young age. Oh, that's awful.
Well, then you got the great thing of Martin Starr's character going, my wife tried to pretend to blip on me.
Oh, so good.
We had a fake funeral. Well, the funeral was real. She just wasn't dead.
I just could not stop laughing.
Man,
I'm gonna show you the video.
Okay, I can already tell, man. This is going to be a real stream of consciousness podcast because we're so excited about so many things. So when we mention something, I'm going to try to dig into it for a moment so it's not totally just bouncing from here and there.
Good.
But let's talk about the chaperones. Let's talk about J.B. Smoove and Martin Starr, the actors that play them. I think we're all probably a pretty big fan of both of those guys. I'm a hardcore fan of Martin Starr going all the way back to Freaks and Geeks, and I've liked everything I've seen him do since then. And then J.B. Smoove is one of those guys, a little bit of that guy to me. I mean, you guys maybe are a little more familiar with him, but I tend to sometimes forget he's around until I see him show up in I think he showed up in some kind of like liquor commercial for a while, and then I've seen him in a few movies, and he's always great. And then I don't really think of him as much unless I see him on the screen, though.
I'll say this: if you need
watch
somebody,
Curb Your Enthusiasm?
No, I don't actually.
But if you need somebody to be J.B. Smoove, J.B. Smoove is the best person for that. He is there every single time, just being as J.B. Smoove as you could possibly ask.
See, the biggest role I can remember him for is his role in Film 43.
He's seen Film 43, but nary an episode. Oh my goodness!
Well, look. People are people, man.
Yeah.
Oh man, it just happens. It happens. But I love this duo. I love it that the science teacher at a very science-heavy school believes that his default explanation is witches, which is wonderful to me. I love it that he's convinced it's witches, and I like how Martin Starr is just, well, you can tell he's a lonely guy. I don't know if there's any better way to say that.
I love the glasses that just really just make his eyes so much bigger, and like just that real vacant look on his face the entire time, just going like, God help me, I'm trying, but I just, what can I do?
And for a guy who I would not describe his acting as having range, but the roles he plays have some like this character couldn't be more different than his character on Silicon Valley, yet his line delivery pretty much identical.
Yeah, it's very I don't know how to describe that. A lot of range in a small area. I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, though. I love that guy. I think he's a real treat. And then, yeah, I like it to J.B. Smoove. First off, you're right. He is J.B. Smoove, but then again, I'm thinking he wasn't, like, I bet the name on his birth certificate isn't Smoove.
Well, you think?
For sure. For sure.
I'm going to find out what J.B. Smoove's birth name is. Hold on.
You are correct.
I hope it's actually Smooth. I hope that's his birth name.
Well, it's not on IMDb, so stand by. Just go to the next subject.
Now,
I'll
I took a senior trip. I took a senior trip to Gatlinburg, Tennessee, where I went to school. We didn't quite have the wherewithal to make it all the way to Europe like the kids do here, but we did make it to Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and we had the social studies teacher and the PE teachers, our chaperones. And they were very, very similar to J.B. Smoove and Martin Starr in their levels of incompetence on this class trip.
J.B. Smoove's actual name, Jerry Angelo Brooks. Any guesses to his age?
He's somewhere between 25 and 60.
He's 60.
53, but yeah, there you go.
Oh, man. But, yeah, I like that because, you know, no teacher is probably excited about being a chaperone on a trip. So the ones that do go are going to be pretty darn weird like these two. But I do like it that every time Martin Starr's character, I can't even remember the teachers' names, but whenever Martin Starr's character comes up with a really lame idea and J.B. Smoove's answers, hey, don't blame me. This is all on him. Like that's kind of his refrain. Taking an Ambien before the 8-hour
Mr.
flight.
Harrington and Mr. Dell.
But yeah, this is great, you know, because you may not know this, but I took a 2-week trip with my daughter, sort of a school-related field trip to Ireland. We didn't get to go to some of the places they went to here, so this was pretty good timing. I'd only been back for, back for maybe 2.5 weeks. When I go to see this, I could really relate to this one. You know, I was just like in the right headspace, the right mood for this to absolutely resonate with me.
He's leaning over to other people in the theater. He's leaning over to other people in the theater just going like, it's much smaller than it looks.
I mean, I can remember being on the airplane and watching movies nonstop, you know, and all that kind of stuff. This was just, it was good. It was good timing for me personally to go see this.
Sure.
And we also got attacked by some huge elementals in Ireland, but I failed to mention that
Those
to you
things
guys.
happen. But that is one of the cool parts about this is that what director John Watts has done with both of these Spider-Man films has really just been, we're going to take what is a good teenager film and we're going to wrap that in superhero stuff. Because if you took away the superhero stuff, you'd still have, you could probably add some more stuff in and have like a really, nice fun comedy and everything. But we did that, but put some superhero stuff in it and, you put your chocolate in my peanut butter and there you go.
Damn.
Now, what did you think about Peter's needlessly elaborate plan to tell MJ that he likes her?
It is so high school kid that it's fantastic. I mean, that's just how stupid
real.
high school kid thinks. He goes, here's what I'm going to do. Here's the plan. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and it's all going to, and it never does. It never works out that way. So, but it's so high school that it's fantastic.
And there's also the high school mentality, or at least for me, I don't want to speak on everyone's behalf, but you guys tell me if you agree or not. You really start to think it's more about the circumstance, the situation, the gift, how you tell her that you like her than it is about what she actually thinks of you.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
If you don't do it right, then, you fail the mission, as it were.
Like if she says no on the Eiffel Tower when you say, I like you, can I kiss you? And she says no, suddenly in your mind, it's because you asked at the Eiffel Tower. It's not because she doesn't want to kiss you.
No, it should have been in the Louvre. Darn it.
So if I could go back and talk to Peter here, I would say, either you either want to do this like a couple weeks before the trip or at the very end of the trip. You don't want to do it smack dab in the middle of the trip or you're going to have a miserable,
That's
awkward
true. It
second
could get
half,
super awkward and terrible for the rest of the trip. You're not wrong.
And there's only like 8 kids on this trip, 9 kids. So it's not even like you could blend in with a different group,
I do love how they are so just flippant with like, just let them do whatever they want. Most of these kids are running wild over there, man.
I do love the look on their face when Martin Starr tells them he's got a special surprise. They're going to go to the opera. Great
looks between him and between Ned and Peter, and he's just like, so yes, this is what you want to do. You gotta you're my man behind the keyboard here. Oh, I think it'd be a great fun thing. We should do this. It'd be very enlightening.
And I'll say this: when I was about 20, I don't remember exactly how old I was, but it was about 20, and I went to Prague. I did go to the opera. In fact, I'm pretty sure that they actually filmed that in Prague because that looked like the opera house I went to see Don Giovanni in.
Well, Prague was mentioned in the credits, so probably.
And I thought, they're making a joke out of what I actually went out of my way to do when I was in Prague. You got to love it.
You're like, what loser would do this? And you're sitting there going, why would you do this to me, movie? Why? I loved you. I've watched all of these Marvel films. I give you lots of money. Why would you do this to me?
Now, what do you think of the fun little back and forth relationship that we're getting with Happy Hogan and Aunt May?
I think that Aunt May can do a whole lot better, but I do understand why they're doing it. I think it's great. I love that they've kind of made her, the way that they're dressing her in this movie is more like she is from the 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is cool. She almost feels like she is a divorcee from when I was a child.
She's got bell bottoms on and everything. It's great.
Here's what she seems like to me, and maybe you can relate to this a little bit, Sean, but you know, I think in the early 90s, like 60s chic came back in style. You know what I'm talking about? Like I don't think she's the first round hippie, and I don't think she's 70s because she's not quite old enough. But I get the idea that she was like 21, 22, and let's say she was like 21, 22 years old around 1990, and she really bought into the second wave hippie thing that came around. And she just has kind of held on to that. Like, that's the idea I'm getting.
Sure. I think you're right. I think that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Like, I could see her jamming out to Groove Is in the Heart, you know, when Peter's not around. But I like it. And I think, you know, you bring up a good point. Aunt May could do so much better than Jon Favreau, Happy Hogan. But she also kind of knows that, too. I mean, this is later on in the movie when they finally talk about it. But in favor of Happy, he was around throughout the blip, you know, when a lot of, you know, less competition when half of the existence is snapped away. And he has access to a private jet, apparently unrestricted access. They said he's still chief of security for Stark, so he's got a steady job. And, you know, Stark, isn't it headquartered in California? So he lives out of town, so she doesn't have to see him all that much. He might just be like a fun guy to hang out with when he's in New York, you know?
It's true.
And I think Aunt May's just kind of like, look, man, I'm having fun. All right. Like, I'm not in the ground yet. I'm still out here. I'm still having fun. And like, even when confronted, it's like, hey, is this a thing? She's like, I mean, we're not.
Yeah, summer fling.
You know, maybe it's we're just kind of.
And at least he's not married. You know, the last guy that gave her attention was a married man, Tony Stark.
That's true. That's true. At least this seems, you know, we're not wrecking homes over here.
Because once Uncle Ben died, you know, Aunt May have limited options there in her neighborhood in Brooklyn, but she does have a car. We did see that she does have a car.
A Volvo. I do want to say this. What I love about this, though, is what they've really done over these two, especially this one, is we've gotten to tell the Uncle Ben story without Uncle Ben.
Yeah, that's pretty great.
It's really, really awesome that they could do that. And, you know, you just kind of, I mean, like sneak it in almost, where you don't even quite realize it until you just go, oh, this is with great power comes great responsibility. And we didn't say the words, and we didn't have Uncle Ben, but you figured it out.
And you know, he's got Uncle Ben's luggage. You see Benjamin Franklin Parker is the initials on the luggage. I didn't see it. I didn't see like an Uncle Ben picture on the mantle or anything that I missed, or was that BFP the only real reference here on the luggage to let us know Uncle Ben was a thing?
As far as I could remember, that's the only thing that I remember specifically seeing. Let's put it that way.
But, you know, there's a part of me wondering if because so much has changed from previous Spider-Man movies to this one. And I think they've all been pretty good changes. And the fact that they made the very smart decision not to recap the origin story. But I started thinking maybe this is like a world where Aunt May never married, and Aunt May's brother, not Ben's brother, is Spider-Man's dad. And she took him in when they died, and she's been like maybe the reason she's always single is because she took in Peter at a young age, and there's going to be something where he blames himself for her never finding love. But, you know, we know that there was someone with the initials BFP that I'll assume is Benjamin Franklin Parker.
I think it's a safe bet. But again, like it is kind of refreshingly nice not to have, you know, the dead uncle conversation and all that kind of stuff, because it is very well worn territory at this point. And you know, if you find another way to go about it and do it, by all means, go and do it. And you know, Tony Stark's basically that role for him.
And I'm also continue to be impressed that they are sticking with making Aunt May look like a real person and not either 90 years old like the first Sam Raimi trilogy did, or, you know, making her. I like that they're just saying, you know what, Marissa Tomei, she can look like Marissa Tomei. Like, we don't have to overdo it with any makeup or costuming. And she's going to be like that real world neighborhood hot aunt. You know, because usually in a movie, the hot aunt is unrealistically hot. And I'm not saying that. I'm trying to put this in right terms. They don't glam Marissa Tomei up at all for the hot Aunt May version.
Yeah. It's a very natural look, and I want to talk about this too because this goes along. This is something else that I thought of when I watched this movie as well. Zendaya is almost a lot the same way too. She's 22. Everybody, I just want to put that on the table so nothing's creepy here. But she's an attractive young lady. But they don't goose her up for Hollywood. You know what I mean? They have her. She looks like any girl that you would go and see in a high school. And I just like that, just to have all of these kids really look like kids that you would see in a high school parking lot.
And I do like it too. Zendaya, real world, few inches taller than Tom Holland. Tom Holland, not a tall guy.
I kind of like that too. I don't know why.
I like that too, but you can also tell the scenes when he's borrowing Tom Cruise's Apple box.
Yeah.
Because there are some scenes where you can say, oh, suddenly they're the same height when she was a head taller than him when we saw the full shot of them walking side by side.
Some of those are, we put this camera up high here, this one down low here, and then everything are
Now, are they an item in real life, or is that just like Tiger Beat magazine kind of stuff I'm making up?
I have no idea. But I don't care. Don't care.
Yeah, I don't pay any attention to it.
Yeah, I don't really pay much attention to it either. My kids had mentioned it, and then I wondered, like, boy, that's really got to make you self-conscious when you need the Apple cart, not the Apple cart, the Apple box for the movies. But in real life, like, he could probably afford an Apple box in real life if he wanted it. But I just wonder if that adds a level of awkwardness.
He's got his own real life Happy Hogan that comes over and just puts another box in him in front whenever he's walking.
I like to picture it's actually Jon Favreau.
It might be. You never know. He's got to do things in between acting and executive producing these films.
Yeah.
Well,
also, can we talk about the person who is like the unsung hero of this movie, which is whoever is doing all of the males' hair in this movie?
Yeah.
All of the hair of male actors in this movie is incredible at their job. Tom Holland's hair looks amazing. Jake Gyllenhaal's hair is incredible in this movie.
True.
And Tom Holland's hair is amazing in more than one way. You know, there are different scenes that require different things of his hair, and it's like they nail it every time.
Got a lot of looks, as they say.
So I want to work towards the sunglasses, but to work towards the sunglasses, we got to talk about Nick Fury, Nick Fury tranking Ned. We saw that in all the earliest previews, didn't we?
Yeah.
And then I found that scene to be fun. Now, this is a scene that might annoy some people because it's a little low-hanging fruit stuff, but I love people keep knocking on the door. Nick Fury keeps wanting to shoot people. Talking to Peter, like Peter has any control over who knocks on his door. I had a lot of fun with that scene of, Nick Fury, since Peter won't answer his calls, just showing up in his hotel room.
This is the kind of scene that makes me kind of fall in love with John Watts here as a director, because,
I'm glad we're on the same page.
It's this really, especially having the tense music in between each little scene and having it cut off, and just as he starts to millions of years, and you can almost see the lights dim down a little bit. And then someone knocks on the door. It's like, you've got to be, what's going? Can I just get this dramatic stuff out here, please? I thought it was great.
And then Peter can't leave his trip. He makes a good point to Nick Fury, and Nick Fury seems to understand that. And then I love it that pretty much the next day, the way Nick Fury deals with that is by rerouting the whole trip to Prague.
I thought that was good, but again, it shows, especially him, bringing that up to Fury. It's just like, look, what are you, stupid? If I'm Spider-Man over there and Spider-Man's over here, they're going to put two and two together. It doesn't take very smart people to do that. They're going to know I'm Spider-Man. They're all right, fine. We'll put you in a black outfit. Shut up. I thought that was great.
And Nick Fury also gives him the eyeglasses, the sunglasses,
yes.
The famous Tony Stark sunglasses. Puts them on, says the word Edith. We find out Edith stands for Even Dead, I'm the Hero. We've got murals. We've got murals of Iron Man everywhere. We've got remembrances of Tony Stark everywhere. They're still talking about Tony Stark. Tony Stark feels like the biggest character in this movie, and he doesn't physically appear in it. But is this going to kind of be how the Marvel movies go for the next 3 or 4? Or do you think they're getting it all out of their system?
I think this is the get out of the system thing. And also, I think what it also kind of does is really help cement the Marvel Cinematic Universe over on the Sony side, because it was somewhat intertwined with Homecoming, but here they really just kind of go, yeah, we're all in the same place here.
And I love Dimitri. Another character, man, an unsung hero is Dimitri in this movie. But I love it when Dimitri shows up as the new tour guide. And it reminded me when I was in Russia back in college days. And I was part of a group that had to go from Moscow to St. Petersburg. It involved an overnight train trip. And we had a Dimitri. Like, we had a lady that was our tour guide kind of person in Moscow, a lady that was.
Yep. I think Bruce is falling out there a little bit. That story was too hot for air, everybody.
Well,
what can I say?
Well,
Bruce
he's
keeps it blue.
Traveled, and Dimitri was a guy on his thing.
There you
Nailed
go.
it. Done.
Boom. Moving on. I thought, because Mysterio, like back in the comic days and everything, he does all the different illusions and stuff like that with these little cubes and stuff. I thought the drone idea was a really nice way to put this together. And then with, all the artillery and everything, all the drones have, that's how we're able to achieve all of the destruction without actually having these things. I love how he's kind of directing all the stuff. And I will say this, the writing in here for how these kind of, let's just say, because Beck was more or less a special effects guy sometimes for movies. It all kind of depends on what stories you're reading, whatever. But very much, on-set language and everything. I thought it was it seemed very accurate to me, and I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Agreed, and I really like the way that they parsed out how much that Peter knew. Because, you do that wrong, and it's going to seem like the end of Tommy Boy. But the way that they parse it out where, like, he kind of bangs his foot against something that he doesn't know what it is in that one fight. And he's like, what was that, kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. And then later on, it's actually MJ who shows up with, she's like, look at this webbing that I found. And he's like, wait a minute, what is that webbing on? And so, it was just a nice, slow reveal to Peter himself. That it wasn't something that he just immediately figures out, like it's 3 steps before he truly figures out what the deal is.
He's got to put those puzzle pieces together, and honestly, it's great story because you're getting these other characters involved. It gives MJ something to do. And that's good, because oftentimes the female characters in these things get lost.
True.
She came up with this idea. She mostly put it together that he was Spider-Man. Still a little bit shocked, but even then she even admits she was kind of just stabbing in the dark, just seeing
68% sure.
That's great. That's the kind of odds I like. But just going in is really it shows that smart character. She's got a lot of agency and helps move the plot along. And you can't say that for a lot of supporting female characters in these type of superhero films.
It's true. And on top of that too, something that we haven't really discussed yet is that this is still more of that phase 3 Marvel stuff where, you might have your favorite phase 3 movies from Marvel, but by and large, they're all great. Yeah. I'm not a Doctor Strange fan, but I get that people like that movie, and for what that movie is, it's it's the best that movie could be.
Yeah.
And it's more of the same with Spider-Man here, where it's like, oh, so they really do have the right people doing, like, really just peak performance people doing their best work. Because when if there's a couple missteps in this movie, they start losing people quick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's not going to happen. I think that they are getting smaller. They should get smaller with these movies for a while. I think that they need to be on their own for a bit. And it feels like that's what they're trying to do. Mm-hmm. You're going to have crossover all the time. You have Happy in this. You have a couple other things that, nod to other things. But for the most part, Thor ain't showing up for this. And that's great.
Yeah.
Thor shouldn't show up for this.
No, we definitely don't need that. But again, it's nice having the characters ask the question that, you would be asking. Is like, hey, what about these other people that are like way better than me? How come they can't? Well, they're all busy doing stuff. So, this is going to have to be you.
Yeah, they did. And I thought that they did it. It's such a good hand that they have here, to the point where, I can't wait to see the next thing they do. And how often do you say that, especially when you look at something like, I really like the movie Shazam. I think Shazam is great. But after Shazam was over, I wasn't like, oh, man, I can't wait to see the next DC movie.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, even I think you're right. At the end of this Spider-Man movie, you go, not only do I want to see yet another Spider-Man movie, I want to see another Marvel movie, because really, by the end of this thing, and I thought this was such hyperbolic, statements and stuff. When I was looking, how you can just look at Rotten Tomatoes and see little snippets from whatever a reviewer said, and one of the ones that I read. Just glanced by, goes, oh, this will change the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I was like, well, this guy's just trying to get poster quotes and stuff like that. And then when you get to the end of the film, you're like, okay, I actually don't know what they're going to do. I don't know where they're going to go, or, what the trajectory is. And boy, is that exciting.
Agreed. And I think that one of the nice things about it is it also seems like they're kind of putting on the brakes. And I know I mentioned this a little bit earlier when I talked about, like everybody isn't showing up for everything all the time. And that's great. But what I mean is like Spider-Man takes place 5 years in the future. This movie is 5 years from right now, correct? Am I right in thinking that?
Yeah. Wait a minute. All right. Yes. 5 years. Yes. 5 years in the future.
Right. And so because of that, it means that we're still 5 years in the future for all these Marvel movies. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Black Widow is next, isn't it? And that takes place in the past.
I think so.
I think I'm right.
That sounds right.
I think I'm right. And so what does that look like? I mean, after Black Widow's over, does that mean that we're still in the future in Marvel? Are we still a couple years ahead?
The biggest thing for me is that, and listen, I want nothing more than to be proven wrong, okay? But especially after, I just don't know what a Black Widow movie could really offer us. Again, I hope it's super great, but that's the first one that I don't have my antenna up for. I'm sure it'll be good, but do we need that right now, or is it?
I don't know. I think one of the things that they're going to do, and they're going to do very well, is that it's going to feel like a movie from the 70s. And that's cool. I'm glad that they're doing that. I think they should.
Yeah.
And they're one of the things that they've done constantly with Marvel, and now even DC is doing it, is that they're making different styles of movies, and they should continue doing that. That way you don't get that superhero lag.
Yeah.
It feels like. It doesn't feel like I've been to the movies 100 times this year, and sometimes it does. Some years does feel like that.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of things that are a very differing, feels and moods and everything. So it doesn't feel like you're watching the same thing, and that's Marvel's been doing a fantastic job of that, and DC's finally starting to catch on to that trend and everything.
Hey,
there he is.
He's back.
But
yeah, lightning struck. My power went out. Now my internet's down, but I'm on my phone.
Holy smokes!
Oh, dang.
Sorry about that.
For being on the phone, you sound better than Sean does when he's on the phone half the time. So, not bad. Not bad.
Yeah, lightning struck. My power went out. Power came back up. Had to reset my Skype passwords for some reason. Told me my password was wrong 3 times. I reset it, and it said you can't use previous passwords.
Yeah, Microsoft don't trust you, boy.
Well, dang.
Anyhow, I'm back. Yeah, Dimitri, he was on my trip.
See, we got exactly out of that what we thought we would, right?
Exactly.
I tell you what, we just boop right off the bat.
So basically, Bruce, where we're at right now is that we're talking about that, we don't really know where the Marvel universe is headed, but we're very excited for it.
Now, have we talked about? Are we at a point where we kind of covered? I mean, we've wrapped up the plot, and we need to talk about these shockers in the credits.
We have not gone there yet.
Okay. Should we get there?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we should. Now, here's the funny part, because most of the, as the Marvel's been doing for the last couple of years and everything, you get a mid-credit sequence and a post-credit sequence. Mid-credit sequence tends to be something that involves, the future, plot of the MCU and everything. And the last end credits usually tends to be a funny, little gap or something like that. We all have fun, we all have a little tickle and a little laugh, and we just move on with our days. here we have two things that actually very much so weigh on the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Now, the mid-credits scene, I mean, the whole point of the mid-credits scene is that Mysterio had this elaborate backup plan to expose Peter Parker to the world and paint him as a criminal. A couple good things here. Now, before we get into what we really need to talk about, I just want to talk about the plot implications. The MCU is pretty much from square one said, you know what? When Tony Stark got up in front of Congress and said, I am Iron Man, they decided that they weren't going to try to play the really outdated concept of secret identities. And in the whole MCU, only Peter had a secret identity. Now that's over with. So they kind of wrapped that up pretty nicely and painted him as a villain, which makes me think either the next Spider-Man movie, he's going to have to deal with being on the run and trying to clear his name, or else it's going to have to get cleared up in whatever comes between this and the next Spider-Man movie. But really, the thing we want to talk about is, oh my God, in a million years, I never would have guessed J.K. Simmons was going to be back as J. Jonah Jameson.
Man, I would have loved to have a camera on my face when that came on, man, because that smile would have had to have been so big.
So great.
I mean, I would have thought the odds were like 1 in 100,000 or something. I would have thought they just weren't going to do that. And I never would have thought they would be able to keep it under wraps to the point I was surprised by it.
I would not have taken that bet. I'd have been like, no, you'd give me great odds. I'd be like, forget it. It's just not going to happen. We're not that lucky. And sure shooting we are. Oh my gosh. It's so good.
But I hope that's not all we get of J. Jonah Jameson. I hope he shows up more in the future.
Oh,
but JK, I mean, this is just unbelievable. People wanting to recast him. You know, who was it? Terry Crews that wanted to be J. Jonah Jameson.
That was the name that popped up. Yeah.
But I think it's awesome that JK. I mean, he's the only person to bridge these properties, right?
Yeah. Now, I have heard a lot of things. So the director himself does say that, like, this is not the previous J. Jonah Jameson that we saw. This is in the Raimi films and everything. This is a completely, it's the character, but it's not the character that we've seen in the past. So any of your, like, multiverse theories or ideas and stuff, throw those out the window. Those don't really exist. There's the one and only J. Jonah Jameson, and apparently now he's on the internet, very, very much akin to Alex Jones, which is, again, fantastic because that's who J. Jonah Jameson would absolutely be.
Yes.
Yeah, but I love it that Jake. I never thought that was possible. Never thought that was possible. Now, what do I hope for? Who was it that was Uncle Ben in the Raimi movies?
Oh, I cannot remember his name off the top of my head.
I'm sorry I asked then. I apologize to put you on the spot like that, but it would have been it'd be great too if they could bring him back too, because it would make no sense for him to be Marissa Tomei's ex-husband or dead husband. That would be great.
I'm
too.
like, wow, this guy is Cliff Robertson. Cliff Robertson. That's
Cliff Robertson.
I could see the guy's head, but I couldn't think of his name.
Go ahead and bring him back as Uncle Ben. Find some other weird crossovers. But yeah, the J. Jonah Jameson thing, I was, if nothing else, that was worth the price of admission to me. And I think it was to you too, Adam.
Oh, yeah. I'm such a huge fan of A, that character, and B, his portrayal of that character. It's just like, it took something that I already loved and made me love it even more. And then you said, guess what? That thing that you thought was gone and lost forever, we still got it. And we're releasing it in a special edition. And you're just like, this is the best day ever.
Now, the absolute post-credit scene where it's revealed that Maria Hill and Nick Fury are actually Talos and Talos' wife. I can't remember her name, but...
Talos' wife?
Yeah. Anyway, shape-shifting Skrulls were posing as Nick Fury and Maria Hill. And first off, it makes this one of those movies you have fun watching the second time and say, where did they drop those clues? So where do you guys come down on it? Do you think that they went into this from the beginning knowing that they were writing a fake Nick Fury, or do you think that they put that in our own ability to see patterns the way we want to see them makes it fit?
I think yes is the answer to both of those questions in the same way. I've read a little bit about what John Watts' thoughts on this were and everything. And essentially, because people were asking, they're like, well, how long have they actually been Skrulls? Were they was Nick Fury a Skrull at the funeral? Well, according to John Watts, he was not. He's only been Nick Fury's only a Skrull in this particular movie. That's according to the director.
Okay, because my immediate theory went to Captain Marvel, And the last time we know for a fact we were seeing the real Nick Fury, we were seeing him in space with Skrulls. So I'm thinking that maybe Talos replaced Nick Fury all the way back in the 90s. And every single Nick Fury thing we've seen has been Talos following orders from Nick Fury up in space. Like maybe he's been there ever since the end of Captain Marvel.
Now, I read another thing that was like super interesting that I thought was just like this is probably just a crazy fan theory. But there's something about, I forget exactly, I should have pulled it up, but there's something about how Nick Fury actually cuts his sandwiches. He can only eat a sandwich if it's cut diagonally. But at some point during one of the other earlier films, he's actually cutting it, vertically. And like people were like, see, that wasn't him all the way back there. And it's like, it's a little bit nuts, but I love crazy conspiracy theories.
It
love
makes
that.
it more fun.
Yeah, it's silly. It's like, it's probably not. And according to John Watts, it's not. But, it's fun to, I love that. I love to see that kind of conspiracy theory crap.
One thing I can say with confidence is when Jon Favreau was making the Iron Man, the first Iron Man, he wasn't planning for that to be a fake Nick Fury at the end.
No.
Like, you know what I mean? So you could try to give them some praise. Oh, also in the credits, when the credits roll, I did notice, and it shouldn't be that big of a deal, that big of a surprise, but I did notice that Feige got his PGA credit before Pascal got hers.
Hey, listen, man. I mean, it might say Pascal Pictures up there, but we know who's making this work properly, and it's Feige, dude. I mean, that is your secret ingredient to all of this stuff working. It just is.
And you mentioned this at the top of the show, but Feige had said that this, not Endgame, but this is the final entry in the first saga. Does this really feel like the last chapter or a first chapter? Because I don't know. He may have his reasons for saying it, but this has a lot of passing of the baton in it. This really feels like the first chapter in the next thing to me, more like that than it does. This feels more like a prologue for the next round of events than it does an episode for the first one.
Well, if I can quote a song from the 90s, every new beginning is another beginning.
The nice thing about this movie is that it does wrap everything else up. So that when we go, whatever the next thing is, we're not going to keep wailing away on the fact that, like the blip happened and Tony Stark is dead and Captain America isn't around anymore. Yeah. And that's great, because if you're trying to get people into your crap, this is a great way to do it.
Yeah, you get all the backstory and everything. You don't have to worry about that. And then exactly. You have to move on. I don't think that they would not be well served to stay in this lane any further. And I think that's precisely what this movie is to make sure that we can finish all this up and let's never, it becomes Armin Tamzarian. Let's never speak of this again.
Right. And Kevin Feige was throwing some smoke screens out about this movie too. So after the fact, he basically, no, I was just joking. It really is the first chapter and the next thing. Because at one point when people saw some previews and they said, well, when exactly does this take place? Because we saw Peter Parker disappear at the end of Infinity War. And he says, here, I'll tell you this definitively. It happens before Infinity War, but after Endgame. So, that was all just malarkey, because it's none of this is before Infinity War. But he does like to throw those things out there at conventions.
I think Feige is a great kind of just planting some seeds where they may not necessarily need to. And like he does the best job. He tells you what you need to know. And what you don't need to know, he don't tell you, because you don't need to know that until you see it. And when you see it, you're going to be so much happier that you didn't know.
And I'm also impressed with how much faith all parties involved, but in particular the Disney side of the equation has in what amounts to nothing more than a handshake agreement. I mean, Sony could opt out of this co-op that they're doing at any time, which, we all think would be foolish to do, but they're building up the next, central figure in the MCU as a character that they don't have definitive contractual control over. Their new Iron Man is Spider-Man, which makes sense in terms of who the characters are, but it shows a lot of confidence that this, like I said, nothing more than a handshake agreement will hold long enough for it to not have proven to be a bad idea.
And one of the things that I you guys probably noticed this, but I only thought about it later, is that at the end of Spider-Man, he's literally going through the Avengers Tower at the end of it. Mm-hmm. And there's something else there now. And I'm wondering what that is. Is it Norman Osborn? Is it the Fantastic Four? And again, this is yet again one of the things that makes the Marvel Universe so great, is that it makes you think about stuff like that.
Well, I read a little something, and I didn't see it the second. Like when I went to see it the second time, I thought in my head before the movie starts, oh, I'm going to look for this because I read about it. And of course, the story is enthralling, and I just forget to look because I'm looking at the characters and having fun with the story. Sure. But apparently, with obviously Stark, and then the Avengers building, and supposedly there is a sign here in there that has like a 1.2.3. And then a question mark.
Right.
So, is this the new Baxter building, perhaps? Like I said, Oscorp is another interesting option for sure. But again, I love stuff like that. Just plant the seeds, and then when they, when it's time to reap those things, we'll do them in the next movie.
It makes life fun.
Oh, it's so good.
So pretty good chance there'll be another Spider-Man movie before they reboot.
Well, we got about almost $600 million this past from Tuesday until now. So I'm going to say yes. They've even I think they've even opened up the possibility of really actually just getting Venom into this Marvel universe and stuff, because that movie did well.
It makes sense.
And, not having a Venom and Spider-Man, or Spider-Man and Venom, doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense to me. So, do it.
Yep.
I think that's just about. But this is just it's a seriously fun movie. We haven't talked enough. I just want to kind of punch in real quick. Jake Gyllenhaal's fantastic.
So good.
He's great in everything he's in, but he's so good. Gosh, he's good.
And thanks to the blackout, I didn't get to take advantage of the fourth time I could tell the story about how Kirsten Dunst wanted him to take Tobey Maguire's place in Spider-Man 3 or whatever.
I think that's got to be a weird thing for him in a way, but I guess a cool thing. But I thought the character was just done really, really well. I loved all the little flashbacks to all the other people that have just been, in one way or another harmed by Tony Stark's stuff.
Peter Billingsley makes
Peter
his
Billingsley's back
again.
Come on, man. That's just awesome. Can't get
MCU's been great at that.
Yeah, they it's like they know what they're doing over there. I don't know. It's really strange.
It is like it.
But you know who else does everything correct? One Sylvester Stallone. How in the world, though, could this movie in any way, shape, or form relate back to him 1-to-1? How is that even possible?
Well, thank you, Adam. I have a prepared statement.
Oh.
Dig, if you will, my stomach. Feel how it trembles inside. Why does it tremble inside? Because I have a hot take I've never heard anyone else make when it comes to these Marvel pictures. And there's a high probability that I'm going to look more insane than Amanda Bynes tweeting to Drake.
Ooh.
Amanda, did you not understand that literally everyone in the world can read your tweets, or worse? Did you already know everyone could, and you thought that this made you look normal, like this was normal behavior? Now, if you don't know what I'm referencing here, do yourself a favor and check it out, unless you get more offended than the other people, or if you are a child, or if you hate things that are awesome. Anyway, here's my theory. Get ready for it. Jon Favreau is the reason why the MCU is so great. Now, not only did he direct Iron Man, not only has he acted in at least 8 different Marvel pictures, but, and to me, this is the most important thing of all, Jon Favreau knew when to stop directing these movies. That is a much bigger deal than some people might think. Now, what would have happened if Favreau insisted on directing Infinity War? Who has more juice, Favreau or the Russo brothers? Before Infinity War, it's probably Favreau. Yeah. I'll do you better than that. What if Favreau, after the success of the first Iron Man, decided that he wanted to direct every single other Marvel movie? That he had the right to first refusal on every other Marvel movie that's been made since 2008. Marvel needed Iron Man to work so badly that he could have probably made a deal that looks a lot like that, but chose not to. Jon Favreau is the main reason why the MCU works. Want to know why the MCU isn't so dark and brooding? It's Jon Favreau. Why does the first Marvel movie hold up even after 10 years? Jon Favreau. And who is this week's Stallone connection? Favreau, John. You see, back in 2011, Jon Favreau made a picture with his real-life friend and a guy who has been in comedy for more than 20 years, even though he hasn't made me laugh a single time, Kevin James. Now, that picture's name was The Zookeeper. I've never seen it, so it hasn't had the opportunity to not make me laugh. But the best part about The Zookeeper is that it has nothing to do with anything that happened on screen. Nope. It has to do with PETA. Now, I know PETA gets a bad rap, and they probably should, but they also stopped pictures and TV shows from treating animals the way that they used to. You need a horse to trip over, you trip that horse.
Yeah.
And yeah, pretty awful. They used to treat animals real awful back then. But in 2009, during the making of The Zookeeper, this happens. This is from PETA's own website, so I'm very sure I'll hear from them again at some point, probably in an email. Anyway, just a month after, this is quote, just a month after PETA wrote to the cast and producers of The Zookeeper to warn them that the company supplying animals for the movie's production has a long list of USDA citations, we have heartbreaking news to report. Tweet, a giraffe on the set who also had been forced to perform in Ace Ventura and a slew of Toys R Us commercials, has died. The giraffe's name is Tweet. Continuing. Tweet collapsed in his pen while being fed on Friday. While giraffes in the wild can live into their mid-20s, Tweet was only 18 years old. Tweet's premature death may have resulted from eating pieces of blue tarp that covered his enclosure. The whistleblower alleges that Tweet's owner and trainers were notified that the giraffe had been eating the tarp, and they did nothing about it. That's awful. Now, I'm glad that, and that's end quote. Now, I'm glad that PETA wrote to the cast of The Zookeeper, because if there's one person who's going to care about the humane treatment of a giraffe, it's Sylvester Stallone. Now, Stallone was the voice of Joe the Lion. Favreau was the voice of Jerome the Bear. The voice of the giraffe was Maya Rudolph, who at the time of this recording is doing just fine, and that I know of hasn't eaten any tarps yet. And there you have it, HMPers. This week's Stallone connection is none other than the man responsible for the high quality of the MCU, Jon Favreau. I like giraffes. The one or two I've met in my lifetime seem pretty cool. Thank you. I'm Sean Kovacs. Thank you.
Bruce, you ever fed a giraffe? It's a delight.
I have seen many a giraffe tongue. I've seen giraffes in the wild.
Listen to this guy. Can you believe it? I'm over here trying to have a good, fun time,
Now,
and he's in here rubbing.
Admit, I missed some of the key parts of that Stallone connection because I was reading a Vanity Fair article called Amanda Bynes Finally Explains Her Infamous Drake Tweet. You got me sidelined from the beginning.
Listen, I'm not going to lie to you. You're not wrong, because I've read a couple of these things, and it's just like, you know that you shouldn't just like type out all of your thoughts, right?
Well, when asked about it, she said, quote, I was serious, but I was also on drugs.
Well, there you go. That makes sense.
I love somebody who just comes out and says it. Oh, yeah.
Sometimes A plus B does equal C. You never know. Well, here at Hero Movie Podcast, we have our own patented Robin rating system. So, if you want to check that out, head on over to Facebook.com/Hero Movie Podcast. It's right there at the top of the screen. And while you're there, throw the page a like, why don't you? Bruce, where does Spider-Man Far From Home fall in the Robin rating system for you, sir?
Pretty darn good, man. And this has been, this summer, you know, stuff can't get real hot and then real cold too close together. Like glass will crack, metal will crack, concrete will crack. My brain is cracking because we've had some pretty mediocre movies, and now we've had a couple of really awesome ones with Endgame, and this one's pretty darn good. So I'm falling into the trap that far too many people fall in, where everything's either a 1 or a 10, you know? Yeah. So this is really, really good. This is really good. But I'm going to call it a Tim Drake for now, because maybe there was a thing here or there that just wasn't made for me as much as for other people. So I'm going to give it a Tim Drake. But, in 5 to 6 months, when we get to re-review things, I'm already making a note to go back and say whether I want to change this to a Dick Grayson or not. But I don't want to give out too many new releases, too many Dick Graysons in a row. I'm going to say Tim Drake.
Yeah. I'm going to follow you up. I'm Tim Drake as well. It's like it's very high. I don't know that I want to go all the way to the top. I have seen it twice. I thoroughly enjoyed it both times. As I was saying in the Dinger Zone episode, you don't need to go see it in 4DX. I wouldn't necessarily suggest you spend your money on that. More details in the Dinger Zone. But it's well worth your time and effort. It's a heck of a lot of fun. And, there's so many, just like you said, mediocre films that are out right now, especially this time, kind of into summer almost, that, we're not getting a lot more good stuff. So enjoy the good things while you can. That's a Tim Drake for me. Sean?
I'm going Tim Drake also. This is what I mean when I say that we're all in lockstep a lot of the time. This is exactly what I mean. Because we're all doing it for the exact same reason, which is that we don't want to have a recency bias of like, this is the greatest Spider-Man movie ever made. Like, none of us want to be like
but
that.
But it's pretty darn good.
It is really good. It's one of those movies where, like, I'm very sure I'm going to see it in, like a couple of weeks or months even, and just be like, wow, I sure was right about that one. This one's great. It just has that feel to it. It doesn't feel like it's going to be like episode 1, The Phantom Menace.
No, that we're all trying to convince ourselves. No, it was okay. It's fine.
No, it's good.
I mean, it may have had a couple of bumps in it, but, shut up.
Oh, maybe next week for the Dinger Zone, I can give you my theory that the Star Wars prequels don't exist in the MCU. We'll talk about that. Make a note of that, Adam, because I'll forget.
All right.
Oh, what a great idea. That's a good one.
Excellent. Well, I don't think that we've actually discussed what we're doing next week, so we'll try to figure that out. In the meantime, Bruce, where can we find more of your work on the internet?
Oh, just go straight to Chubby Wizard. All kinds of good talk on Chubby Wizard. We covered a little bit of Spider-Man Far From Home over there, too. Our next episode, we'll be diving into Stranger Things Season 3, along with some big comic talk. Really, really big comic talk. Big league comic talk.
You're not selling it enough. Is it big? How big is it? Is it big?
Huge. It's huge. Comic talk.
Huge comic
huge.
Talk. Huge. It's amazing. Sean, anything?
Go to Preacher Podcast where you can find a lot of stuff about Preacher.
Ready to feel really overworked, guys?
We're about
4 weeks away from the premiere.
We're about
today
to.
marks 4 weeks away.
So we've got that coming up. We've got another secret thing coming up. Probably I don't know when that's launching. Is there even a date for that yet? I don't think so.
Nope.
No.
So we'll be it's going to be some busy times over here. So keep subscribe, keep listening, and you'll get all the new stuff. It's cool like that. So that is it, everybody. Join us next week when we're talking about, well, who knows? You'll find out if you're a member of patreon.com/HMP. We'd like to thank all those people again. But until then, for the Bruce Leslie. I was only going to say absent. I forgot that you came back.
We're all here.
For Bruce Leslie and Sean Koufax, I'm Adam Portrais. Stay super, everybody.
Bye, Marty and Evie.
Because I want to be a boyfriend. Hey, little girl, I want to be a boyfriend. Sweet little girl.